Hey everybody, my name's Jason from Night Owls Media, and today we're going to be talking about a super sexy topic: media management. Okay, seriously, media management's one of those things that usually gets brushed by when you're talking about things like editing, but it's one of those aspects that, especially after the project is done and you need to come back to it, or if you're working with a lot of different projects at the same time, it really helps to know where all your ducks are and to have them all in a row. So I'm going to go through a few things before we even get into the media management, and this is how I do things. Now, this might not be the right way or the way everyone else does it, and that's okay. I believe when you're dealing with film projects or any kind of art projects in general, to find the way that works best for you. And this is the way that works best for me. Especially when I need to go back to a project that I haven't worked on in a few years, I can immediately know exactly where all my project files, where all my video files, where all my audio files, where all those render files are, so I can quickly jump to it and not waste a lot of time. So first we're going to start off with my computer. I have 9 hard drives in my computer, and each one is very specific. The first hard drive is a dedicated SSD for my OS and my Adobe programs. I have another solid state hard drive just dedicated for render and scratch files, and this is so that my projects can load faster, back up faster, things like that, so I'm not wasting a lot of time waiting in After Effects, waiting in Premiere, so I can just keep working. I have 2 1 terabyte solid state hard drives simply dedicated for editing. And these are just the projects that I'm working on right at this moment. And this allows me to work very fast, very little downtime, very little lag, but it allows me to edit the project I'm working on right now. Now granted, 1 terabyte sounds like a lot, but if you deal with video, you know how quickly that can stack up. So I have one project I'm working on right now called Vendors, where it's 20 separate interviews, each about 3 hours each. And it's roughly about 3 to 4 terabytes. So obviously I don't have all those files on my solid state hard drive editing drive. I have those on a separate hard drive, and I have 5 hard disk hard drives, the old platter spinning ones. And that allows me to have a lot more room, and each of those drives are 4 terabyte each. Again, those get filled up pretty quick. Also, every project I do, I also back up to external hard drives, but we'll get to that in a second. Now here's my first step. Before I shoot a project, I'll create a folder for that project. And typically I create it on my editing drive, and this allows for the offload or footage dump much faster. First, I'll create the folder, the name of the project, and the date the project was shot on. Inside that folder, I will create 6 other folders. The folders include video, audio, edit, syncs, other, and music. For the audio folder, I'll create a folder for every different kind of recorder that I used on that day. If I use 3 different type of lav mics, I will create a folder for each of the lav mics. Usually at a wedding reception, we use 2 recorders, one through the DJ's booth and one as a backup. Even if it's just one audio file, I'll still create a folder for it, so I instantly know by looking at it without going into the properties or the details, I know which recorder that was, so that when I'm going back through things, I know exactly what file I'm looking for. In the video folder, I'll do the exact same thing. I will create a folder for each of the cameras that we used that day, and inside those folders, I will create a folder for each of the cards we used. So each card used throughout a day gets its own folder inside the folder of its own camera. Now for the A6500, I'll typically use 2 or 3 cards throughout the day, and I will create a folder for each of those cards. I like having an edit folder, especially when I'm working with another editor, so when they send me a new project file, I can label their project file with their name and the date they send it to me, so that I have a long list of different edits that I can go back to and make sure that I'm not overwriting anything or screwing anything up. Now the sync folder is really important for me, so things don't get overloaded with different files. When I'm working on a project like a conference or a live event or a wedding, typically I have a lot of cameras. And yes, you can sync inside Premiere or your editing program, but I seem to have a lot of issues with syncing a lot of cameras at the same time. 1 or 2 cameras, not an issue. But once you start getting into 5, 6, 7, 8 cameras, Premiere tends to not know what to do. So I'll throw all these files into Pluralize. I'll export it as a sync file, I'll bring that in, and it makes my life so much easier. But typically on a wedding, I want to have my interviews linked up, I want to have my ceremony synced up, I want to have my reception synced up, the first look, all those key moments where I have audio and video that are a necessity to have the right timing. I want to have those as each individual sync files. So I like to have a folder just for that. So again, if I need to re-import it, I know exactly where it's at. The music folder obviously contains music. So inside my music folder, I typically create 4 folders. The first folder is music I actually use on the day. And these are songs that are actually going to be in the film. And this folder, I don't actually put the files in there until everything's said and done, because throughout the editing process, I change my mind a lot of things change, and eventually we'll get to the point where, yes, this is the exact song we want to use, so I will make sure that's in the right folder. The second folder is licenses. To use any music in a video, you have to license the music. It means you have to buy the rights to it. You can't just go to iTunes and buy it for $1 or $2. You have to go to these websites, license the song, get the contract, and then I keep those contracts in these folders, so if anything ever does come up, which YouTube likes to have their little fun algorithm, and they send out those emails of cease and desist, and I can quickly grab that project's file, throw it to their email, and everything is said and done, all good. That way, again, I'm not losing time looking for this stuff. I know exactly where those are at. The third folder I use is for highlight trailers or teasers. Now, these are more energetic, more poppy kind of songs. And these are the songs that I want to catch your attention, because I'm only going to hold your attention for a minute to maybe 3 minutes long. So I need to have these music that's a little more upbeat, but it's not going to be the same kind of music in the project. So when I did a project for Midas, we used a melancholy song to kind of make the emotion of the video come out. But when I was editing it to music that we couldn't legally use. This is where the fourth folder comes in. These are called temp tracks. Temp tracks are songs that we can't legally use, but if I can edit it to these temp tracks, then I know the flow of the piece, and then I can find a song just as good that I can legally license, and then I'll re-edit my piece very slightly to make it fit the new music. The last folder I have in any of my projects is Other. And Other can be literally anything. Like for a promo video, sometimes a client will send additional videos, and I don't want it to be lost in translation with all the other video in my video folder, so I'll create an Other folder with their videos. Or sometimes a client will send me a logo or a color scheme or news clippings or anything like that. Anything a client will send me or anything that we don't create ourselves, I will put into the Other folder. And this way I always know in the Other folder is everything else I need. I also like to create Pantone codes. So if you go into Photoshop, you can highlight a color and then go into the color map and look at the code at the bottom, and that's your Pantone color. And I do this for corporate clients or companies that have the logo and the colors that they want to use to emphasize their company. I will create the Pantone color and I'll put it in a text file, so that way I know any text or any animation or any logos or anything I'm going to put on the screen trying to recreate that color, I'll know the exact color they have. And that's something else. When you're dealing with corporate clients, ask them for their Pantone color. Any good corporate client is always going to have those colors available. Early in my career, a lot of companies who didn't have the budget for a logo would buy the JPEG of their logo to use for their websites or business cards, but they wouldn't buy the high quality version. In translation, when they want me to create a video that's 1080p and really big on screen, and I have to blow up this 72 DPI logo that they just copy and pasted from their website for me, it looks awful. So always ask your clientele if they have a high resolution, transparent background version of their logo. A TIFF or a PNG or a PSD are really great with this. So all I have to do after the shoot is sit down at my computer, grab my media cards, and start dumping all the footage. Once I start dumping all the footage, I will make sure before I take this card out of the reader, I will right-click on the folder that I just copied, and I will right-click on the folder that I just created where I dumped all the footage onto, and I will compare the file sizes. And 99% of the time, they're identical sizes. Sometimes something might have happened. A background program might have interrupted your offloading, and it stalled something, corrupting a file, which does happen. It typically happens to me about once or twice a year, so this is why I always do this. Especially before I wipe a card, I will keep the cards with all the footage on it for the next week or so, or until my next project, and I will actually go back to that other project and I will always double check everything, because once you lose footage, it's gone forever, and I would rather take the time to double check and triple check and quadruple check rather than lose footage. So once everything's offloaded and everything's verified data size wise, I will connect an external hard drive to my computer and I'll copy that folder over to the external hard drive. Now, I do this twice for every project. Every project goes onto 2 separate hard drives. So for a large project, typically I'll buy 2 hard drives just for that project. Every project I do goes onto 2 separate hard drives. So typically per year, I look at 6 to 8 4 terabyte hard drives. Now, I'm a big fan of the Western Digitals, these little ones. For years, I used to use these. And these are the 4 terabyte Western Digital MyBooks, and they're great, but they need a power source and they're big. And when you're dealing with 4 to 6 of these per year, your space tends to go away quickly. So what I used to do with these, and I still do on my current ones, is I bought a label maker, which is worth its weight in gold. Buy a label maker, buy some extra tape, do it. And I write exactly what is on this drive. And this is 2019 Night Owls Media Projects Disc 4. And we're in June, so it's already Disc 4. And I did the same thing. This is Night Owls Media Backup 1. So this was my first one. And what I used to do is I used to type out each individual project that was on here. So instead of just actually like connecting this and looking through the backup projects, I would instantly know what projects are on here. So buy a label maker, it is worth it for that. Once all the footage is on the external hard drive, again, I will double check the media. I will make sure the details are the same size. And then I go about starting the edit. This isn't the fun part of filmmaking, but I think it's very necessary. And I know there are other ways to do it, but this is my way. And again, when I need to go back to a project that's like 3 or 4 or even 8 years old, I know exactly where all my files are, so there's never an issue. Guys, if you like this series, awesome. I'm so happy this works. I'm having a blast doing this. It allows me to communicate my creative process, and I think that's a lot of fun. If you enjoy podcasts, I started a podcast this year where I interview people and I get to learn their stories about everything from telling jokes to how they started their business to what makes a good film. You can find my podcast at behindeverystory.com, or you can look up on iTunes and it's Behind Every Story. Also, be sure to check out, starting in July, the Vendors web series, where I sit down with the leading wedding industry professionals and I ask them all the ins and outs, tips and tricks to what makes a good wedding. All about the wedding planning process, all the things that couples out there need to know, and all the questions they might not even know to ask yet. So I'm super excited for that to come out. Look for that starting in July of 2019. I'm really excited. And always remember, the hammer doesn't build the table. It's the carpenter wielding the hammer. A better tool won't make you a better filmmaker. A better tool makes a good storyteller do their job easier. Like, subscribe, check us out. I hope to keep doing these. I have a lot more planned for the future. I'm really big into film theory, so I have a whole lecture series of film theory going to coming out soon. Comment. I will definitely comment back if you ever have questions. I'm super happy to help. Do something awesome today. Be better. I'm Jason from Night Owls Media, and thank you for taking the time.